The overhead light in my kitchen hums, a sound I've never noticed before tonight. It feels like the only sound in the world. My eyes are locked on a single sheet of paper in my hand. The words are simple, clinical, a collection of percentages and charts, but one line burns. 0.0% paternity match. The letters don't blur. They're too sharp, too cruel. They sit there, black and white, dismantling 20 years of my life with a printer's precision. My breath hitches, a dry, painful thing in my throat. Through the archway, the warm glow of the living room feels like a scene from someone else's life. My wife, Laura, is curled on the sofa, her laughter light and easy. On the tablet screen, our son Jacob's face is animated, telling some story from college. Our son. The words echo in my head, hollow now. I watch his smile, the way his brow furrows just like mine when he's thinking. Or the way I thought it was like mine. How many times had I looked at that face and seen my own father looking back? A legacy, a chain. Now it was just a coincidence, a cruel trick of random genetics. My hand starts to shake. The paper trembles, that damning headline fluttering. A hot, silent rage floods my veins, thick and suffocating. It's not aimed at Jacob, never at him. It's at the lie. The 2 decades built on it, the bedtime stories, the teaching him to ride a bike, the quiet pride at his graduation. Was any of it mine to feel? My fingers curl inward, slowly at first, then with a crushing finality. The paper crumples with a sharp, satisfying crunch. I squeeze until my knuckles bleach white, trying to physically destroy the evidence, to make the truth as small and hidden as the secret that created it. I look at my fist, a tight, ruined ball of the worst truth I've ever known. Then I look back at the living room, at Laura's smiling profile. The mask on my face is solid, a sculpture of the calm father and husband I am supposed to be. But behind it, everything is shattered. Every memory, every certainty is just broken glass. I can't stand in this light anymore. It feels too exposing, like it'll show the fracture lines spreading across my skin. My free hand moves on its own, reaching for the switch on the wall. I click it off. The kitchen plunges into darkness. A sudden, complete void. I stand there in the cool, silent black, the crushed result, heavy in my hand. From the other room, the sound of their shared laughter drifts in, a melody from a life I suddenly don't recognize. I just stand there, invisible in the dark, holding the proof that I have been a stranger in my own home all along. The Montana sun was high and hot, the kind that baked the dirt around the barn into hardpan. I was elbow-deep in the engine of my old Ford, the smell of oil and gasoline as familiar as my own name. 20 years of ranch life will do that. Weather your hands, steady your nerves. "So, Professor Mendel here," I called out, wiping my forehead with a greasy rag. "How's the world of academia treating you?" My son Jacob leaned against the fence post, his college-town sneakers looking out of place in the dust. "It's good, Dad, really good. We're deep into genetics this semester. It's wild, you know, how a single strand of DNA can tell you everything about where you come from, what you're made of." His words, so casual, so full of youthful curiosity, didn't just hit me. They dropped right through the floor of my stomach. The wrench I was holding slipped from my fingers, clanging against the engine block with a sound that seemed to echo for miles. Where you come from. The image flashed, unbidden and perfect, the sterile, bright white of a hospital room in Bozeman. 20 years younger, my hands, so much smoother then, cradling a tiny, wrapped bundle. Jacob, Laura, pale and beautiful and exhausted, smiling up at me from the bed with a love that felt like the only solid ground in the world. And in the doorway, a shadow. Clint, my best friend, my ranch hand, holding a cheap bouquet of gas station flowers. He was always charismatic, always had a joke ready, but that day, he was just awkward. His smile didn't reach his eyes. I'd written it off as him being uncomfortable with hospitals, with the raw emotion of it all. But now, with Jacob's innocent words hanging in the dry air, I saw it again. That wasn't discomfort. It was a deep, quiet jealousy, a shadow passing over the sun. "Dad, you okay?" Jacob's voice pulled me back. I realized I was just staring at the engine, not seeing it. "Yeah," I said, my own voice sounding rough. "Yeah, just genetics, huh? That's something." I finished up with the truck, my movements automatic, but my mind was 1,000 miles away in that past room. Later, after Jacob had gone inside, I sat at the old kitchen table, the one my grandfather built. My laptop glowed in the dim light. For fun, I told myself. Just for fun. A little project. Trace the family roots. Give Jacob some history for one of his classes. My fingers moved almost on their own, finding the site, clicking through. Ancestry and Health Insights. One simple kit. I added it to the cart, my heart hammering against my ribs like it was trying to escape. I typed in my address here on the ranch, my payment info, and hit confirm. The order was placed. Just a simple envelope soon to be in my mailbox. Just a bit of fun. But as I closed the laptop, the silence of the house felt heavier than ever, full of that old, remembered shadow from the hospital doorway. The day the DNA kit arrived felt like Christmas morning. I tore open the box right there in the kitchen, holding up the little vials and swabs like they were treasure. "Look at this, Laura. We're going to find out if we're really descended from those Oregon Trail pioneers like Grandma always said." My wife didn't share my excitement. She stared at the kit from across the room, her arms folded. "Wyatt, that's a waste of money. You know those things aren't perfectly accurate." Her voice was tight, a note higher than usual. "It's not about perfect accuracy, it's about the story," I insisted, already reading the instructions. "A little adventure. Come on, it'll be fun." I didn't understand her resistance. Wasn't everyone curious about where they came from? I didn't wait for her blessing. I swabbed my cheek right then and there, scraping the inside of my mouth as the instructions dictated, then sealing my sample into its prepaid envelope. But my plan had a second part. My son, Jacob, was visiting from college for the weekend. As he was leaving, coffee cup in hand, I stopped him at the door. "Hey, bud, you done with that?" I asked, pointing to the cup. "Yeah. Just trash it for me, Dad." "Thanks," he said, handing it over with a smile before heading out to his car. I held the crumpled paper cup carefully. Inside, stuck to the rim, was his DNA. My sample, and now his. I packaged them separately, my heart pounding with a secret thrill. I was the detective of my own family history. I dropped both envelopes in the mailbox with a satisfying clunk, and that's when the real wait began. So did the change in Laura. It was like a slow leak in the atmosphere of our home. The easy warmth we usually had started to seep away, replaced by a cold, thin tension. She became distant, physically and emotionally. She'd find a spot on the far end of the couch, scrolling on her phone, her responses to my questions just short, absent-minded grunts. Then came the fights. Not big blow-ups, but sharp, sudden bickering over nothing. a dish left in the sink, the volume of the TV, the brand of groceries I bought. "Why would you get this kind of pasta, Wyatt? You know I prefer the other shape." Her criticism was constant, a low-grade static in our daily life. But the clearest sign was the phone. She was always on it, her thumbs flying. And whenever I walked into the room, there was this quick, furtive movement, a flip of the wrist, planting her phone screen side down on the couch or the table. Every single time. She'd look up with a smile that didn't reach her eyes, a smile that felt like a closed door. I told myself it was stress from her work, or maybe she was just annoyed about the DNA test money. But in the quiet moments, watching her guard that phone with her life, a tiny cold knot of doubt began to form in my stomach. The wait for the results wasn't just about ancestry anymore. It felt like a countdown to something else entirely. The email notification hit my phone with a soft ping. I was in my home office just finishing up some work. The subject line was simple, almost cheerful. "Your ancestry and health insights results are ready." My heart, which had been a steady drum for weeks, suddenly felt like it was trying to escape my chest. This was it. The sealed envelope on my desk, the one I'd been too scared to open, was now irrelevant. The truth was a click away. I took a deep breath, my fingers cold on the mouse. I logged into the portal. The screen loaded with a spinning icon, taking an eternity. Then it populated. My eyes went straight to the section I'd both dreaded and needed to see. Paternity result. The words were clinical, black and white on the bright screen. Probability of paternity, 0.0%. A definitive, glaring 0. The world didn't shatter. It just went silent. The hum of my computer fan faded away. All I could hear was the whooshing of my own blood in my ears. 0.0%. Jacob. My son. Not mine. Numb, I scrolled. The Health Insights section loaded, showing a list of Jacob's genetic markers for certain predispositions. I knew my family's medical history by heart. Arthur's allergies, our grandfather's heart condition. None of it lined up. These markers were for a stranger, for another man's lineage. I needed to hold it. I needed proof that wasn't just pixels. I hit print. The printer whirred to life, spitting out the page that dismantled my life. I picked it up, the paper warm, the ink smudging slightly under my thumbprint on that devastating 0.0%. Almost on autopilot, my cursor moved. There was another tab, DNA Relatives. I clicked it. A list populated, mostly distant cousins with tiny percentages. And then, at the very top, close family match. Predicted relationship, 50%. Parent, child, full sibling. Match. Name, Clint B. The air left my lungs in a rush. Clint B. My wife's old friend from college. The guy who was always a little too familiar, a little too present in our early years. A 50% match. That's what a father shares with a child. A cold, sick feeling, sharper than any shock, poured down my spine. My blood didn't run hot with anger. Not yet. It ran cold, like ice water in my veins, freezing me to this chair, in this room, with this impossible truth glowing on the screen in front of me. Clint. It was Clint. The engine of my truck was the only sound as I pulled into the gravel lot of the Silver Spur. My hands were tight on the wheel. This was Clint's place. Had been for 30 years. I didn't get out. I just sat there in the dark cab, watching the neon beer signs glow in the windows. And then I saw it, parked around back, like it was trying to hide. Laura's little blue Honda, the one I'd paid off for her last birthday. A cold, clear feeling settled in my chest right next to the ache. It wasn't even shock anymore, it was just proof. I didn't storm in, I didn't make a scene. I just put the truck in reverse, the gravel crunching under my tires as I left it all behind me. I drove straight to Arthur's. My brother took one look at my face and wordlessly led me to his kitchen table. I didn't say anything. I just slid the sealed envelope across the worn wood, the words Ancestry and Health Insights screaming up at us. He opened it, his eyes scanning the summary page, the percentages, the cold, hard science of it. I watched his jaw clench, a muscle ticking in his cheek. He wasn't a yeller, my brother. His fury was a quiet, dangerous thing. "That son of a bitch," he finally said, the words low and gritted. He looked from the paper to me. 20 years, Wyatt. 20 years he let you carry this. I know what it cost, I said, my voice rough. Every baseball uniform, every dentist visit, every damn tuition payment. Arthur nodded, already shifting gears. The anger was there, but he's always been pragmatic. The most dangerous man in a fight is the one who keeps his head. Anger won't get it back. We need a lawyer, a good one, not someone in this town. By the next afternoon, we were in a quiet office in Billings. The lawyer, a sharp-eyed woman named Ms. Vance, listened without a flicker of surprise as I laid it out. She examined the DNA results with a clinical nod. "What you're looking for is a disestablishment of paternity," she explained, her tone precise. "Based on this, we can petition the court to legally sever your parental obligations. The subsequent step is restitution. We can sue for reimbursement of all child support paid, yes, but also any extraordinary expenses. Medical bills you covered, extracurriculars, that college fund you mentioned, we can go after that too. Essentially, we will be asking the court to make him financially accountable for the entirety of the fraud." Hearing it laid out like that, so clean and possible, was like taking a first full breath in weeks. It wasn't about vengeance, it was about balance, making the ledger reflect the truth. Arthur put a firm hand on my shoulder as we left. We didn't talk much on the drive back. We didn't need to. The plan was set. For the first time since I opened that envelope, I wasn't just drifting in the shock of it. I was driving toward something. The sound of the printer was the only noise in the house, a mechanical hum, then the slick slide of paper. I picked up the 2 sheets, still warm. The words Ancestry and Health Insights at the top felt like a brand. I carried them to the kitchen table, the sealed envelope I'd guarded for days now, irrelevant. Laura was wiping down the counter, her back to me. "We need to talk," I said, my voice flat. She turned, a polite smile already forming. Then she saw my face. It faltered. "Wyatt, what's wrong?" I didn't answer. I just laid the pages on the table, facing her. I watched her eyes scan the header, then drop to the summary. The color drained from her face so completely I thought she might faint. Her hand flew to her mouth. "No," she whispered. This is a mistake. The lab, they must have—" "It's not a mistake, Laura." The ice in my own voice surprised me. "It's science. It's fact. Jacob is not my biological son. which means for 23 years you have looked me in the eye and lied. The denial crumbled. The tears came, great heaving sobs. She stumbled into a chair, her hands gripping the edge of the table as if it were a life raft. "It was one time," she choked out, the words barely intelligible. "One stupid, terrible time. A month before I knew I was pregnant. It was with Clint. It meant nothing. He was just there, and I was angry with you after a fight, and it was over in minutes. I was so ashamed. When I found out I was pregnant, I prayed it was yours. I convinced myself it was yours." She reached for my hand across the table. I didn't move. "Wyatt, please. You are his father in every single way that has ever mattered. You raised him. You taught him to ride a bike. You're his dad." Her begging was a distant noise, like a radio playing in another room. All I could see was Clint's smug face. All I could feel was the tectonic plates of my life shearing apart. The man I was, the father, the husband, was a fiction built on her lie. "You have until morning," I said, standing. The chair legs screeched against the tile. "Pack what you need. I want you gone." Her wail followed me out of the kitchen, but it didn't touch me. Nothing could. I walked down the hall, past the framed photos of a family that never truly existed, and pushed open the door to Jacob's old room. It was preserved like a museum, ready for a visit that now felt like a sick joke. The baseball trophies, the science fair ribbons. Were any of his talents from me, or was it all Clint's bloodline? I sat on the edge of his neatly made bed, in the dark. The silence was absolute. I looked at the empty desk where I'd helped him with homework, at the closet that still held his old jackets. Every memory in this room, every moment of pride and worry and love, was now stained, hollowed out. I had built my entire adult life as a father in these walls, and tonight she hadn't just broken my heart. She had destroyed the man who lived here. I was just the ghost he left behind. The sun was hanging low over the ranch, painting everything in that long golden light that usually makes me feel peaceful. Today it just felt like a stage light. I adjusted my hat, the sealed envelope, the one holding the Ancestry and Health Insights results, heavy in my jacket's inner pocket. Arthur was inside with the lawyer, putting the final, notarized touches on the petition. We'd gone over the plan a dozen times. Serve Laura at her apartment, and serve Clint here, right now. I saw the dust cloud first, then his truck rattling down the drive. My stomach tightened. Clint climbed out, that same old smug grin plastered on his face, like he'd already won something just by being invited. "Wyatt!" he called out, slamming his door. "Figured you'd come around. A man can't run a place like this alone. What's the equipment you're looking to sell? I might be interested in a fair price." I forced a smile, the kind that doesn't reach your eyes. "Appreciate you coming out, Clint. Let's talk over here." I led him away from the house toward the old corral near the barn. The setting was perfect. Isolated. No witnesses except the one we'd planted. "So old times, huh?" Clint said, leaning on the fence. "Never thought I'd see the day you'd ask me back." "Yeah," I said, my voice flat. "Old times." I didn't mention Laura. Not a word. Instead, I reached into my jacket. His eyes followed the movement, probably expecting a flask or a cigar. I pulled out the envelope. Not the original. That was safe with the lawyer. But a photocopied set of every damning page. "What's this?" he asked, the grin fading a little. "This," I said, holding it out, is a conversation starter I should have had with my mother 30 years ago." He took it, confused. He pulled out the papers, his eyes scanning the header. Ancestry and Health Insights. Then he saw the shared match percentage, the undeniable black and white proof of our relation. His head snapped up, his eyes wide and searching my face. The color began to drain from his cheeks. That was the cue. From the shadowed doorway of the barn, the process server, a stern-faced woman in a crisp suit, emerged. She walked with purpose, straight toward us. Clint saw her, his confusion deepening into panic. "Clint Hawthorne?" she asked, her voice all business. "Who's asking?" he stammered. "Legal documents for you, sir." She presented him with a thick packet. "You've been served in the matter of Wyatt's petition to the court." He was holding the DNA proof in one hand, the formal summons in the other. His eyes darted between them, reading the line item on the petition I knew by heart. The financial damages being sought for a lifetime of fraud and stolen inheritance. The number was substantial. It was everything. All the smugness, all the bluster, just evaporated. His face went from pale to a sickly gray. He looked at me, and for the first time I saw real fear. Not anger, not defiance. Pure, cold terror. He didn't say a word. He just stood there, papers trembling in his hands, as the server nodded to me and walked calmly back to her car. I finally spoke, my voice quiet in the evening stillness. "The discussion about the equipment is over, Clint. You can see yourself out." He just stood there, frozen, as I turned my back and walked toward the house where Arthur and Justice were waiting. The air in the county courthouse conference room was cold enough to hang between us. I sat beside Arthur, my brother's shoulder a solid wall next to mine, while across the polished table, Clint avoided my eyes. Laura looked pale, her hands clenched in her lap. This was the mandatory mediation, the last stop before a judge would see everything. The mediator, a tired-looking woman with glasses, read the dry facts of the paternity case in a monotone. Each word felt like a stone dropping into still water. Then it was Clint's turn. He leaned forward, that familiar, smug defiance twisting his features. "This test is a mistake," he blustered, waving a hand dismissively. "Labs mess up all the time. This proves nothing." But my lawyer, a calm man in a sharp suit, simply opened his briefcase. He didn't slam the report down, just slid it across the table with a quiet finality. "The court-ordered paternity test, Your Honor. A 99.99% probability of paternity. It is, by any legal or scientific standard, airtight." You could see the walls closing in on Clint. The mediator asked about child support, about 18 years of retroactive payments, about the financial ruin that was now a spreadsheet in front of him. His lawyer whispered frantically in his ear, but Clint wasn't listening anymore. The pressure, the cold numbers, the truth sitting there in black and white, it all became too much. His face flushed a deep, mottled red. He shoved back from the table, the legs of his chair screeching against the floor. He didn't look at me or the lawyers. He turned on Laura, his finger jabbing the air in her direction. "This was your mess," he shouted, his voice cracking in the sterile room. "You said he'd never know. You promised me this would just go away." The silence that followed was absolute. It was more deafening than his yell. Laura flinched as if struck, her eyes wide with a mixture of shame and panic. There it was. The ugly, cowardly truth, laid bare not in a shadowy alley but right here under the fluorescent lights of the county courthouse. It wasn't just a secret he'd kept. It was a conspiracy she'd enabled. Arthur let out a low, slow breath beside me. I didn't move. I just watched the man who was my biological father unravel, confessing not out of remorse, but out of sheer cornered rage. The mediator closed her folder with a soft thump. "It's clear," she said, her voice weary, "that we are past the point of mediation today." The meeting was over. We had lost nothing, and Clint, in his explosion, had lost everything that mattered. The fight wasn't won yet, but the lie was dead, and we had all heard its last gasping breath. The gavel came down with a sound that felt like it should have shaken the world, but in the quiet of the courtroom it was just a sharp crack of wood. The judge's words were clear, final. Paternity disestablished. A legal phantom erased from a record. I, Wyatt Earp, was no longer a father. The air should have felt lighter. It just felt thin. Then came the second judgment, the reimbursement, for years of support, for medical bills, for the ghost of a life I'd funded. The sum the judge named was staggering. I saw Clint's lawyer lean over and whisper something, and for the first time I saw real color drain from Clint's face. It wasn't anger anymore. It was panic. To pay it, he'd have to sell his land, that little 10-acre patch he was always so proud of, his proof that he was a self-made man. Arthur, sitting solidly beside me, put a heavy hand on my shoulder. "It's over, Wyatt," he murmured. But it didn't feel like victory. It felt like an excavation. We dug and dug through years of lies, and all we found at the bottom was a hollow, empty space. Clint didn't look at me as they filed out. The swagger was gone, replaced by a slumped, hurried shuffle. He was broken, financially and publicly. Within the month, I heard he'd sold his property for a fraction of its worth and left the county. Gone. Not with a bang, but with the whisper of a foreclosure notice. I drove past Laura's old house a week later. It was empty. Someone told me she'd moved into a small apartment in town. Alone. The white picket illusion, the one I'd paid for, was finally dismantled. Arthur tried to throw a barbecue to celebrate. He slapped me on the back, talked about justice being served. I nodded. I ate the food. But the taste was like ash. The money, when it eventually came through, was just a number in a bank account. It couldn't buy back the years or erase the doubt that now lived in me like a second heartbeat. I stood on my porch that night, looking at the same stars I'd looked at all those years ago when I thought I was building a future. I had my name back. My bank account was repaired. Clint was ruined and gone. So why did it feel like we'd all lost? The law had seen the truth. It had punished the liar, and it had made me whole on paper. But some debts, I guess, aren't financial. Some voids can't be filled with a judge's order. The victory was complete, and it was the emptiest thing I'd ever held. The fall air in Montana has a bite to it now, clean and sharp as a knife. I'm on the porch, a wool blanket over my knees, just watching the light bleed out over the mountains. It paints the peaks in gold, then rust, then a deep, cold blue. Arthur's in the rocker next to me. He doesn't say a word. He hasn't for an hour. He just smokes his pipe, the sweet smell of tobacco mixing with the scent of pine and distant wood smoke. His silence isn't empty. It's solid. It's the best kind of support he knows how to give. The crunch of gravel makes us both look up. Jacob's truck rolls to a stop by the fence. My breath catches, same as it does every time now. The sight of him is a complicated ache, pride, a grief so deep it's become part of my bones, and a fragile, terrifying hope. He gets out, his boots quiet on the dirt. The months since the trial have been painful, complex. We've talked in fits and starts. He knows everything now. Clint's manipulation, the decades of deception. He understands the lie wasn't mine to tell, but that doesn't erase the years he lost. The father he thought he had never really existed. He leans against the porch rail, not quite looking at me, his gaze on the same mountains. "Cold setting in early," he says, his voice quieter, older than it should be. "It'll be a hard winter." I agree, my own voice rough. A long pause stretches, filled only by the sigh of the wind. Then he speaks again, so softly I almost miss it. "I'll need to winterize the pipes at my place next weekend. Could use a hand, Dad." The word hangs in the air between us. It doesn't feel like it used to. It's not a simple title anymore. It's a choice, a fragile, hard-won peace. We don't hug. That's too much, too soon. But he called me Dad. He leaves not long after, with a nod to Arthur. The quiet settles back, deeper now. The money from the lawsuit is in my bank account. It's just numbers on a screen, paper in a vault. It means nothing. Upstairs, in the bottom drawer of my old desk, buried under maps and ledgers, is the real relic of that broken past. The sealed envelope. The Ancestry and Health Insights results. I haven't opened it. I don't think I ever will. Some truths you only need to learn once. Arthur taps out his pipe. "He'll be back," he says, finally breaking his silence. I know. The last of the light fades. The land is just a dark silhouette against a star-pricked sky. The truth broke my family, but the lie would have broken me. The land is still here. I'm still here. I'll rebuild from what's left.